So guys, it is official. Conte is completely out of the race for, if you can even call it that actually, for being Tottenham's next manager for the upcoming season. I honestly did a lot of research on this and I could be a little bit more disappointed, I guess. I never thought it was going to be a fit. I know it's easy for me to say that now, given that it's completely off. But I thought, hey, why let this work go to waste and share a little bit about why this was never going to be a good fit on the pitch. Let's put budgets aside for now. We know that all of that already, but why Conte may have looked at Tottenham squad and said, I can't work with this. Spurs fans should definitely not be kidding themselves right now. Antonio Conte is one of the best managers available currently. He's had a ton of success in the past, not just with Chelsea, obviously, but with Inter, and before that, the Italian squad. 5 titles in the last 7 seasons is nothing to scoff at, especially if you're a Spurs fan. Make no mistake about it, only a great manager could have taken the mess that Mourinho left at Chelsea in the 16-17 season and taken them up to a league title. That's literally incredible. Only a great manager could take Inter Milan and in his first season challenge for the Scudetto and then actually take it in his second season, albeit against a weaker Juventus. So let's briefly look at how Inter Milan set up for the 1920 season and try to understand who their best players were, their key players, and their general style of play. And we can use that framework to understand whether that system of play would be a good fit for the majority of Tottenham's players. There's a lot of videos out there that analyze Inter, so I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible because really the main meat of it is to talk about how this system might be implemented at Tottenham. So the Inter typically line up in a 3-5-2 system. In the backline, you have Skriniar, De Vrij, and Bastoni, all 3 of which are excellent defenders within their own right, but also crucially are great on the ball as well. And that's something that we'll discuss in a minute here. In the 5 in the midfield, you'll have Hakimi and Perisic on either end of the flank, and both of which are also on either end of their career. Hakimi is one of the most exciting young players out there, whereas Perisic is a little bit on the twilight years, right? But that doesn't matter because both of them are very, very good at executing what Conte asks of them. And in the midfield 3, you have Barella, Brozovic, and Eriksen. Each has a very clearly defined role, which again, I'll go into in a second here. And then, of course, one of the best duos out there, Lautaro Martinez and Romelu Lukaku. Typically, Inter are more than happy to build out from the back, but they also have the capability to send the ball long and progress the ball through route 1. So first and foremost, Skriniar and Bastoni keep the width here in order to open up space for De Vrij and Brozovic to pick up a pass. Hakimi and Perisic stay out wide, so Handanovic has absolutely no problem chipping the ball towards either wingback in order to progress the play if there is a high press. And then, of course, Handanovic also has Lukaku as well, who is great in the air and can knock the ball down for, say, Lautaro Martinez, who is this pacey forward, or a Christian Eriksen, right, who's typically dropping in as a number 10. Skriniar and Bastoni also have really good passing ability and are more than happy to send the ball into the channels for the wingbacks as well. However, the main way that Inter build up is through Brozovic. Brozovic likes to drop deep, find the ball from either Skriniar, De Vrij, or Bastoni to make sure that he is the pivot. He is the one that controls the passing with the other 2 center mids. Now, it can't be overstated just how important Brozovic is to this entire system. Not only does he act as the main fulcrum and pivot of possession style football, making the 4th most progressive passes into the final third in the entire Serie A with an 85% success rate, but also he acts as the screen in front of the front 3 as well. Think of a Højbjerg just with better passing. And I bring that up maybe a bit early in the video, but that's one of the biggest issues that I'm sure Conte had with this Tottenham team. As for the other midfielders, one is tasked with being a ball-winning midfielder while also being a deep-line playmaker, while the other is tasked with being a Mezzala. A Mezzala is not your traditional number 10 that would typically pop up here, pulling the strings, but rather operates in the half spaces between opposition players in order to create combination play with the rest of his teammates. Christian Eriksen has been excellent at that towards the second half of the season. The first half of the season, he ran into a lot of challenges at Inter Milan. But in possession, Inter turned into a 3-3-4 because for example, here Hakimi and Perisic, the wingbacks, push up to support the attack as much as possible. So really, the creative force is basically the responsibility lands on all three midfielders. Defensively, Inter are pretty straightforward. The use of wingbacks obviously aids them not only in the attack, but of course in the defense as well, through all forms of play, through all phases of play. So Hakimi and Perisic typically pressure if the ball comes out to the opposition fullback, but of course, so does the forward line and also the midfielders. This creates a numerical advantage and tries to essentially force a turnover from the opposition. Once the opposition gets to the halfway line and further up the pitch, that's when Inter start to recede into a very compact defensive block that typically looks like a 5-3-2, of course, with the wingbacks just lining up side by side with their three center backs. It's really important to note that this is extremely compact. It's extremely effective, and it essentially drives the opposition to the outer flanks so that they can put in a cross. Of course, Inter is setting a trap there because between the likes of Skriniar, De Vrij, and Bastoni, there is a lot of aerial power there. In fact, both De Vrij and Perisic have very good success in the air, winning about 63% of their aerial duels, which lands them in the top 30 list in Serie A for aerial duels won. All right, that's enough on Inter. Let's see how Tottenham might be able to implement this type of system in North London. If you're a Tottenham fan, which I'm sure you are if you're watching this, you know how bad this defense is. If you're a Premier League fan, then I'm sure you have some knowledge of that as well. So I'm not going to go into it because I'm going to be bored to death the more I talk about it. Everyone knows that it needs to be improved on, and that's going to be up to the next manager, regardless of who he is. I do think there are some more interesting red flags that Conte may have seen with our squad, and I think one of them may have been who is going to play that Brozovic role, simply because I don't think that Spurs have a player that can do what Brozovic does, even a little bit. Given that Brozovic is asked to sit right in front of his three defenders, there's absolutely no doubt that if Conte had made the switch to Tottenham, he would be asking Højbjerg to fulfill that responsibility. Just looking at Højbjerg's numbers though and comparing them to Brozovic, they're similar, but clearly Brozovic is better in progressing the ball. Højbjerg hasn't beat as far as defensive duels and winning tackles and just overall aggression and defending when the opposition has the ball, which is of course incredibly important. But let's not forget that, again, for the Brozovic role in a Conte team, they need to be really good at progressing the ball as well. And although we've seen a little bit of that from Højbjerg in this last season, we didn't see enough for anyone to say that he can be consistently relied upon to break out of a press, progress the ball, make a pass that breaks defensive lines. Again, something that Brozovic does week in, week out. As I mentioned before, Conte wants all of his midfielders to get involved with a little bit of creativity in progressing the ball. And Brozovic is a huge example of that. He finished the season with 5.88 expected assists and got the ball into the final third roughly with an 84.5% success rate, which is pretty good for a defensive, quote unquote, midfielder. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, on the other hand, finished the season with 2.02 expected assists and moved the ball into the final third about 79 to 78% of the time successfully. So when you look at those numbers, it lets you know that one player can be relied upon in order to progress the attack, and the other has a little bit of a harder time in aiding the strikers, the wingers in the final third. And you really start to see these kind of like mismatches all across the midfield. I mean, there's no real ball winner in this Tottenham side for the midfield apart from Højbjerg. And of course, if he's your screen, you don't want him running around the pitch trying to gain the ball back. You want him cutting off passing lanes right in front of the back three. The other options, of course, Gio and Tanguy Ndombele, Sissoko, who might be moving on very soon, and Harry Winks as well. Really, the only real options are Gio or Tanguy Ndombele, and neither of them are that ball-winning midfielder. Both of them can be that deep-line playmaker, especially Ndombele, and even Dele Alli can fit into that Mezzala role that Christian Eriksen was relied upon towards the second half of the season. Where he's drifting in and out of half spaces, just overall just becoming a nuisance for the opposition, and through his flicks or quick interplay, creating attacking opportunities. I think that might be a good fit for Dele Alli. But apart from that, it does leave a couple of holes in the midfield itself. So that adds to Conte's, I'm sure, wish list of, all right, if I go into this club, here's what I need, not just defenders, but also a couple of midfielders as well. So we talked a little bit about the back line, talked a little bit about the midfield. Really the biggest issue here is that wingbacks make this system work. Inter finished the season second highest amount of crosses completed per game. It is just part of Conte's system. It's really, really important that two good wingbacks, whether they be Hakimi, Perisic, Ashley Young, Pendreva, whoever, they bomb upwards and downwards and try to get involved as much as possible in all phases of play. As such, they're just as key, if not more important to the system than someone like Brozovic. Hakimi got 9 assists playing as a wingback for a Serie A side. On the other end of the pitch, or on the other flank, Perisic was 5th highest with the most crosses per 90 at 4.72. Again, this is just a part of Conte's system, a huge part of it. Who does Spurs have that can come anywhere close to those numbers in that position? Maybe Reguilon, although he still needs a lot of time to develop, especially as we saw him towards the end of the season just kind of run out of gas, his form just completely dipped. On the right side, we don't have anyone. Simply put, we don't really have a right wing back. I mean, yeah, we have Matt Doherty, but he might be on his way out, and I'm not sure that he's good enough for Conte, to be completely honest with you. Serge might be on his way out as well. Frankly, maybe Japhet Tanganga, but he's not really a wingback. He's more of a fullback. So this whole wingback situation at Spurs is a huge mess. We talk about center backs all the time, but the fullbacks and the fullbacks and the wingbacks need to get figured out as well. So of course Conte is going to look at the squad and be like, I don't know how I could work with this team. Yes, there's no doubt about it that Conte, I think, would have worked wonders with Son and Kane up top. I mean, that's literally just a better version of Lukaku and Martinez. So there are ways that this could fit a Conte system for sure. But you look at the rest of the pitch and you really, really need to wonder whether Tottenham's squad is good enough to essentially carry out Conte's instructions. So I'm not surprised that he didn't move forward with us. I am surprised that the conversation was even had, because all of this aside, the money's just not there for a revamp. I mean, it's just not. Tottenham are going to have to sell a lot of players in order to bring any in. So at the end of the day, weird that we were interested in him in the first place. Really weird that he was interested in us. And it just looks like, just looking at the numbers, looking at our players, comparing them to Inter, just looks like a bit of a non-starter. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I certainly did, just working through this theoretical. Again, I just didn't want this work to go to waste. I thought it was worth talking about, again, not just the financials, and just understanding why Conte, looking at the squad, might have hesitations. Indeed, there are many hesitations to be had. So what's next? Who knows, but stick around. I'll be making more of these analysis videos as more links and hopefully a confirmation for a manager comes down the pipe in the future. Until then, take care.